Welcome to Not a Lonely Coffee Break. We're so excited to have you here. We are your hosts.
And I'm Meaghan, and we are a podcast about coffee and work, but make it queer. So, speaking of queer, I've had this song stuck in my head. I don't know, I blame TikTok and memes and whatever, but it's a good song. It's that Pink Pony Club by Chaparral Road. And it's like I've been literally I've been waking up in the morning and it's in my head. It's great. But
It's definitely very catchy. Like
Mhm.
every time I hear it, I'm like, this is a vibe, like a whole dance vibe.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, it's catchy, it's catchy, it's catchy. And then I was like curious. I was like, let me look into the lyrics and stuff. And it's just, there's like a lot of information like people have written about it, about how the lyrics are really about how, I guess it's about going to a club or strip club or like something like that. That's what they said. A strip club and like just like being able to like be yourself, even if that's like a sexy self that you may or may not be comfortable with. But just be who you want to be. And I was like, you know what, those are good vibes because it's been a long week, and so sometimes I just have to remember I just need to be myself. I don't have to like fit into a shape that I may not fit into. So
No, I think she has a few other songs that are all about kind of like embracing your true self
yeah,
and all that. I don't know. Our listeners are going to judge me. I have not, I guess 100%. I mean, she's great. I love her. When she comes on, I listen to her. But I have not like gotten onto that bandwagon of like
the
she is my
train. Yeah.
Spotify go-to station.
Mm-hmm.
It's just if she happens to come on, then I'm like, oh, this is a vibe. But I'm not like, oh my gosh, I gotta listen to more.
Right, right. No, you're right.
But she did just kind of like blow up out of nowhere.
She
Like
really
she's
did.
been around, but then like she booked a tour and then she got big.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's like the queer idol
Pop idol. Yeah.
of the summer
Basically of 2024.
of 2024.
Yeah, hopefully her success will keep going. But yeah, I was just really surprised because I was like, I had no idea who she was, and she's got quite a few hits out there.
Yeah, she does.
So,
She does.
so yeah, just a little bit of pop culture out there for those who didn't have it stuck in your head, but maybe
Now
you
you
should.
will.
Now you will. Now you should listen to it.
Right now we will all be having it stuck in our head for sure. So, Meaghan, there has been, and we talked about this a little bit last time, but there's been a lot going on. It's been kind of a whirlwind summer
Yeah.
/ political cycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know this, you know me, I don't like to spend too long sort of in the news just because as I have a lot of stuff I deal with in my own life. I don't want to just like be saturated with all of that, but there's just so much and it's been so hard. I feel like this cycle for me to not feel overwhelmed
Right.
by like everything that's going on. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like having a whole new political candidate just like pop in the ring just kind of really threw everyone for a loop. And I think that I think now everyone doesn't really know what to do. It seems like they're just like, oh, okay, let's run with it.
I mean, yeah and no, I will say, I don't know, from my perspective at least, I think when we sort of saw that there was now this new candidate, and by new, she's not new, right?
Yeah,
She's
right.
someone we
around.
know.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it kind of it brought like a renewed energy into
Right.
the election cycle. Whereas before it was kind of there were even more uncertainties, I think, because everyone wasn't 100% sure if there was going to be a new candidate. There was talk of it. So I think, I don't know, I saw kind of maybe a renewed energy
Yeah. And this energy
Um,
is likely entering your offices.
absolutely.
Like you're like you came back from the weekend and you're like, holy hell! Like, so what do you think?
Mm,
That can be a little bit. The tensions can grow because maybe you're learning things about a coworker or maybe even like a leader in your organization that you didn't really realize because they casually
mhm,
are like talking about these,
mhm,
conversations. But like for a queer person, that could be a little daunting, like I don't want to say the wrong thing or like, it's very easily to be like as an LGBTQ like individual, it could be a little you be placed as a target, because LGBTQ population is always a target, as it seems like for anything negative to bash on or to like bring it up in policies and things like that. So yeah, I mean,
yeah, I think it's probably got, I don't know, from my perspective at least, it's gotten, I think, even harder sometimes to navigate and hold space sometimes for the fact that I'm going to be working with people who may not necessarily have the same beliefs, opinions, even priorities that I do, right?
right.
Everyone kind of
Hmm.
has their own political priorities based on their own experiences. For me, I'm concerned about LGBTQ plus issues and how are these decisions impacting me as a person? Am I going to be safe? Whereas someone else might be worried about something completely different that
Right.
I'm aware of, but maybe I'm not like, that's not the forefront of my mind. But I find it's just gotten so much harder, I think, to kind of hold space for those people and take some not take it
Mm,
personally. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I've just
Well, it's
before I feel like I was kind of able to just be like whatever, and now I'm like, you don't agree with me, I want to shake you.
yeah, I mean, basically, and a lot of people get their information from social
S-
media, right? And so
Right.
if you don't have fact checking or, if
Mhm.
it's not a reliable source, or maybe it's just somebody who might be a talking head that doesn't really
Mhm.
have anything factual to back up what they're trying to say. And then
Mhm.
you have someone who just is like going out, spouting it, and just regurgitating what they're hearing, but it's hurtful. It can be hurtful, especially some of these things that aren't factual, that aren't checked, or like for instance, I think we talked about it before, just before we got on, the issue with the Olympian athlete who was, there was a lot of talk saying that she wasn't a biological female and she wasn't fit to be in the female boxing ring, right? And
Mhm.
that called for her disqualification and like all these things, and just like people are running with it, and it's dangerous, right? Like you said
Mhm.
before, it's dangerous, and it could change her life,
Mhm.
especially from the country that she's from. These things may not be part of what their culture accepts. So,
Mhm.
um, so having social media, it's incredibly dangerous. But then also, so maybe as someone who you're like, I want to get to know things, but I don't know what to do. And social media is literally the only thing I use to get my information and things like that. Your coworkers may not have the diligence, and I'm not trying to talk bad about people, but we don't have time to go and fact check everything, right? Like we don't have time
Mhm.
to go and do our own research all the time. So just being aware that people may not have that same filter, and it's
Mhm.
frustrating. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
exhausting, really.
Yeah, so there is a podcast that my wife likes to listen to,
Mhm.
and the host said something and it just like really stuck with me, and I have found myself just like even sometimes reminding myself of this phrase during this sort of cycle when there is a lot of misinformation coming out across the
Mhm.
board, right? Just
From both
what's true
sides.
from both
Right.
sides, right? Like
Yeah.
what's true, what's not true, what's
Mhm.
factual. And so she said, and I'm probably going to butcher how she said it, but basically it boils down to just because you don't agree with something doesn't mean that it's not a fact, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
facts are there and you might not agree with it, but that doesn't mean that it's not the facts.
Right.
And I
It's not
think that
true.
that's something that like we all need reminding of, because we get stuck in this thing of, well, I don't agree with that, so that can't be true. But like, the example you just gave, you may believe what you want to believe, but people have come out, the Olympic Committee, this athlete, they have come out and said, we have this evidence that says she is a biological female. So those are the facts.
How you feel about that? Okay.
Yeah,
But
how you feel about you are allowed to have those beliefs, but it doesn't change the fact that she's a biological female. And I think, I don't know, there's just a lot of times that I hear something and I've got like, I gotta remind myself of this. Because there's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of things that are being sort of said as fact, and then the more I kind of, at least honestly, sometimes even doing a quick Google search, I quickly find out that it is not,
yeah.
in fact, a fact.
Yeah, Google has gotten too easy, but yeah, no, it's true.
So it's just been really hard, but I think this is the first year I feel like I've sort of leaned in a little bit more to some of the things going on that impact I've always been aware of it, right? But I think this is the first time I've actually kind of been intentional in looking things up for myself instead of just listening. Like, I might hear something first on social media and then I'm like, is this true? Or is this some sort of doctored AI robot nonsense?
We have to be careful nowadays.
I
so
know.
much stuff is just coming out of AI, and
AI is so
AI
tricky.
it's amazing and scary all at the same time, because a lot of it's like there was some because for those of you professionals who use AI for work, like it's okay to use AI for work, like if you're just kind of needing a starting point or needing to be like, okay, I need some sort of outline, but obviously not turning in final work is probably not the smartest bet, because if you ever read deep into what the AI gives you, it's obviously a robot. So I don't recommend. But it was like there was a commercial talking about how the AI is writing the letter for the little girl, right? Did you see that commercial? Yeah,
Yes,
and it's writing for the
like
little girl.
it's
like,
like a
oh, that's
new
cute, but weird. Like,
yeah, it's like a new thing. I've seen a lot because they've partnered with Olympians to promote this new AI thing, and I had the same thing. I was like, that's cute, but also weird because it's not really in her own words.
it's gonna let the little 8-year-old write a cute little letter that isn't grammarly correct. Okay,
draw a little picture of her Olympic idol. I love, I liked the idea of it, but I was also a little, AI can be so creepy.
Yeah, it's
okay, but, and I know this was not even on our radar to talk about, but I still think it's interesting, okay, because it does kind of fit with us kind of exploring different political issues and things.
Right.
So I got the opportunity this summer to take what's called a micro-credential course.
Okay.
Through a university that I am connected to.
Is it like 3 hours long?
No, it's shorter than that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why it's called a micro-credential. So it was like a course, but at the end of it, I got like a little badge to put on my LinkedIn or whatever. But it was about AI. And because I do use AI sometimes in some of the work I do for clients, I was like, oh, maybe this will be helpful. And one of the little modules I had to do talked about ethics and AI. And so it talked about AI is obviously really helpful sometimes for that starting point, but AI discriminatory information that they put out there, because here they get their information from what's already out there
on the internet.
And so they're pulling from certain places where maybe certain voices have been excluded from the conversation.
That's interesting.
Whether it's women or LGBTQ plus individuals or people of color. And so sometimes that information can still be skewed to be a little bit more biased because of the way that they're sort of gathering the data to create this paragraph that you have asked them to write. And I had never thought about it like that
Yeah.
before. I was
Yeah.
like, wow, I never even considered that AI could be biased.
Oh no.
And it of course sent my brain down a further rabbit hole of
Right.
just, I'm a big fan of our digital opportunities available to us. I think they're cool.
Yeah.
But I would like to see us find some sort of way that we can get appropriate legislation
Mm-hmm.
concerning
Protecting.
technology and
Yeah.
protecting us and other people and making sure that we're using it appropriately, setting
Mm-hmm.
boundaries, all of
Yeah.
that, because
Yeah.
we don't have any of that.
There's nothing. I think I saw
No.
something about like there's legislation trying to be brought in for what is it when the deep fakes, but it's for celebrities.
Yes.
Yeah, so they're
because
trying to
all
put
that
out
nonsense with Taylor Swift.
something I don't really know.
It was no, that's what it was. I mean,
Really?
it had been happening, but somebody made these really raunchy Taylor Swift deep fakes and used
Wow.
AI, and people thought they were real.
Ooh.
People thought that she
And
really,
she said, "Hell no."
and she was like, "Excuse me."
And we're gonna create a law because
So
I'm gonna sue some people.
something's gonna happen. I don't know. Politics are scary, but also something that we have to be aware of because there's just so much out there that like we need
critical thinking skills.
Yeah, we need our politicians though to like
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to work together
And to be leaders and
and to be
not,
leaders and
yeah,
find ways to keep us all safe
yeah,
and protected.
right, right. You know, I was doing some research. So for those of you, I do have a background in political advocacy. I went to school for political science, and so I like to kind of dabble in it. And I used to like doing trainings and trying to really help people find ways that they can find good information and good sources and sources from both sides because you really want to know. I would always tell those like, hey, it's okay to be really very, what am I trying to say? Like, you could be really devoted to what you're trying to talk about and what you're trying to stand up for, but you also want to understand the other side too, because if you're only trying to argue one side without having any knowledge of what's going on for the other side of the argument, you're not going to get anything taken care of, right? You're just going to have the same thing to say over and over, but not really be able to come to a compromise. And I think that's what today's politics have really kind of dealt down to is like what I say and what I believe in is true, and it has to be my way, and there is no compromise. But if both sides of the argument, there's many sides to these arguments that that are out and about on the world right now, but if you're really passionate about something and you want to advocate for it, I highly recommend doing research as to why people are against it. Because then you can kind of say, when you are having conversations, you feel more confident. And if they bring up something to you that may have triggered you before, it won't trigger you because you already know it's going to happen, right? But in the workplace, those kinds of conversations don't really work well because it's not a political atmosphere. We're not trying to convince we shouldn't. I personally think we shouldn't be talking about it in the workplace, but things happen, right? We go to get a cup of coffee at break time and you guys start talking about what you saw on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and it's going to come up, right? So I did some research. The society.
Wait, you did some research?
Yeah, weird, right?
What?
I mean,
Meaghan was being the research nerd?
I know. I had to be like, okay, because tough conversations happen in the office all the time. But I'm like,
Absolutely.
with everything going on, I'm like, okay, there have been times when I was in the office and someone was like talking about their political beliefs and like what they wanted the world to look like and whatever. And there were some things I completely felt were sometimes a bit not nice and just inappropriate in some ways. And
Well, I think just to kind of come back to something you were kind of saying, I don't think sometimes the conversations are even as quote unquote simple as like us saying we're going to have a political discussion right now. Sometimes it like bleeds out into like, if you have a leader or manager or sort of like your team leader who makes decisions for your department, maybe they make a decision
Mm-hmm.
about a program or an event or an
Yep.
initiative that aligns with their political idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you may not necessarily feel comfortable being a part of that.
Yeah.
Or maybe you have discovered that your organization is doing a fundraiser for another organization that doesn't align with your personal
Mm-hmm.
political views. And so
Values,
sometimes
so forth.
that's
Yeah.
where I think, I don't know, for me at least, that sometimes is where it gets a little muddy, is
Mm-hmm.
not so much about people talking about who they might be voting for as much as how their political preferences sometimes bleed into the work that we're all trying to do
Right. Uh-huh.
collectively.
Uh-huh. And so it was what? Society for Human Resource Management. So they're pretty
Mm-hmm.
reputable. They're an international organization that helps human resource professionals. They did have an article about how to diffuse political conversations in your workplace, but they also found that 59% of the survey's respondents felt that their managers' beliefs did influence their decision making, and that can have a
Mm-hmm.
huge impact on what your projects that you're doing, or even things that may or may not be comfortable for you. So there's a lot. It would say that a quarter of people have left their jobs because of what their organization's leaders may be doing. Like if we're looking into the C-suite or directors and so forth,
Mm-hmm.
or even as small as like a small business owner, or possibly, just on a managerial level, they're going to leave that job if they feel that if it became tooth and nail, am I going to be protected? Am I going to have a voice to voice out concern, or even have a voice when we're discussing projects and things that have value in my work, So I think when we're thinking about, how just me being a team member, like how can I diffuse a situation, right? And so without having to sacrifice your safety. So I did
Mm-hmm.
find some de-escalating tactics, right?
Oh, some de-escalation.
One thing they did say is like, just acknowledge and, say, hey, your belief or, your ideas do matter. And I know that tensions might be running high, but, I think we should acknowledge that we all will have differing opinions, and maybe right now is not a good time for it. Right. We
Mm-hmm.
want to remind you that we should all feel welcomed, respected in this area. And then if you're a boss and you hear like these conversations keep coming up and maybe it's disrupting day-to-day work, underline that,
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, we're here to focus on what we're working on. It's okay to have these discussions sometimes, but if it's disruptive or even can be, hurtful to another team member, then we shouldn't be having those types of discussions. And I think the last place is the last tip they had was like, come at it as like a place of curiosity, not a place of like aggression, right? Or like, well, this is what I'm going to do and this is what I'm going to say, and it's just hear what they're going to say and just move on from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then you can make your decision of like, hey, is this a good place for me or is it not? And probably bring that up to your leader in the organization and see how that goes. But instead of sacrificing your own safety and also possibly your job, right? If you're not
Mm-hmm.
prepared to lose that job because, things happen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, all of that is really interesting. And I think some good, I don't know, I think good starting points for sure. I'd be curious for further sort of tips and tricks,
me too.
when it maybe moves into more of that toxicity, right? When
Right.
one person's voice is just so overpowering of another person that they don't even feel safe going to their manager and saying, or maybe even that person sort of dismisses the manager, even where it kind of crosses lines, and then there's bullying in the workplace. And that sometimes is also when we can see some of those microaggressions
start to
pop
come out.
up.
Yep.
And so being able to also address those, right? It's one thing to say we're all going to respect each other's opinions and not let that interfere with our work, but it's another thing when that's already happened and now we have to address more severe actions because of someone's political viewpoints.
I
And
am
that
curious
sometimes
to
is
hear,
hard to do.
what that looks like on like from an HR perspective, like what steps can be taken to one, protect the business, I'm sure, but then also investigate what might be happening.
I just know, I've been in workplaces before where, and I can't say for certain that I was discriminated against or treated differently because of my sexual identity. But there were definitely times that I felt like I was maybe being treated more aggressively by coworkers because they didn't necessarily agree with my lifestyle, right? And in my particular workspace, I did not feel heard. I did not feel safe. I went to HR multiple times and said, like, I need y'all to do something. Like, we've tried to, y'all have tried to sit us down and mediate something. There are still issues there. I need y'all to put your foot down and like tell them that their behavior is not okay. And like it was also one of those things, like everyone saw it, everyone knew this was going on. It wasn't like I said they said situation. Everyone knew what was going on, and I just felt like it was one of those things where I wasn't as protected as I should have been. And so I would be curious to hear from people who maybe HR professionals or leaders or coworkers who were able to kind of stand up and put an end to some of that. And I still had a positive outcome, where it wasn't all, we didn't have this massive blow up. We were able to have a successful conflict resolution. Both individuals, still have their opinions, they still have their stuff, but we have found a way that we can still work together for our common goal of XYZ. If that's you, we would love to chat with you more about this.
And we do
Please
have an email.
us at notalonelycoffeebreak@gmail.com or reach out to us on social media, of course.
So yeah, I mean, we want to hear from you. There's so many political LGBTQ activists out there, advocacy groups. There's the Human Rights Campaign, there's Equality Texas, the Trevor Project, GLAAD, and then a bunch of people that are local to DFW and Texas in general. But hopefully we'll have a guest on here so we can really see what's at stake this coming election. What does that mean for you as a professional? And, like anti-discrimination laws, trans protections, even same-sex marriage. I mean, that in itself, is incredibly important to the workforce and how we live our day-to-day lives.
Well, Meaghan, just about out of coffee. That usually is our cue to wrap up. So, again, thank you everyone for joining us. We know it was kind of an interesting conversation today. We hope to continue talking more about things like this, but make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any of those episodes, and also share it with your friends. Don't just subscribe. Share that link with your friends and tell them that you found a wonderful podcast.
Podcasts are better with friends.
Absolutely, because we want you to also not have a lonely coffee break.
That's correct. And don't forget.
Yes. Also, make sure that you are following us on social media. We are on Instagram, LinkedIn. Our Facebook is still down, but we also are on Patreon, where you can join our coffee break crew for $5 a month. And you will have access to lots of great exclusive content that we're starting to put out there. as well as be on the lookout for new merch that will be dropping,
Yeah, I
hopefully
should
any day.
hopefully.
And being a member of that crew will get you first access to any of that content, any of that merch. And feel free, this is one thing, because of our topic today, I would love for you guys to share with us what are some of your concerns
Yeah.
with navigating some of this political jargon, some of the political content issues, all of that. What are some of your concerns in the workplace? If you don't feel
Yes.
comfortable putting it on social media, you can always email us
Yeah.
at notalonlycoffeebreak@gmail. But thank you guys for joining us. We
Thank
love spending our
you.
time with you.
We love y'all.
And cheers,
Cheers, queers.
queers! No.